Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletop, but today is not quite an episode because it's actually just a little bit of a celebration. Last month, if you don't know, if you're a new listener, was actually the 4th anniversary of Tabletopped. That's right, we're almost in our 5s, we're in our flirty 4s, and usually what we do when this happens is that we have one of the other hosts of the pod interview me to kind of get a state of the pod. However, that is not going to happen this year because we did a great recording, super fun, getting everyone chatting, kind of talking about the year that was and the year that will be. And, we've been doing this for a while now, super professional, and I used the wrong microphone input, and so it was garbage and I couldn't use it. So today instead, we're going to have me interviewing me. Nick on Nick. I know you all have that DVD. So why don't we get into it? Welcome to Tabletopped. For those of you that are new, Tabletopped is sort of a passion project that I started a little while ago with some of my best buds and some of the greatest DMs that I knew, just to talk more about the hobby. The first few years we're figuring out how to do this. Then we sort of hit our stride. And then a lot of things happened. The last year has been a little crazy for all of us hosts here at Tabletopped. In fact, a lot of us have gone through a lot of life events. I got married. We've all kind of changed jobs. We lost some recording space. Now we do most of it online. You guys have all probably felt this over the last year. We've gone down to 2 episodes a month rather than 4. However, I think that the podcast has stabilized. We're all kind of back in the swing of things. And if I can just get myself to schedule stuff, darn you ADHD, then we're just going to, continue on. I think 2 days a month are going to be the way that we go. And by days, of course, I mean episodes. But otherwise, what is happening at Tabletopped? Well, Shade has started 2 new games for his friends, including Rio, Franco, and I. And we are doing a lot of fun stuff there. So I'm sure that we're going to be talking about, getting into the swing of a new campaign and how those end. And there are probably going to be some topics there as well. Rio has also been really interested in publishing this year. So he is building a system called We Slay Monsters. I'm super excited to play it. We've already had a couple of meetings around what that's going to feel like when we play. Franco is continuing to publish. He is working on The Last Hunting of the Boar. I promise this year's the year we're going to get that finished and up. It's ready. I mean, if you go to the Patreon, you could play it. It's there. The Ashcan version is great. But we want to get it all laid out for you guys, get some art, do all that kind of thing. So he's working on that and also doing a couple of things over as blog, Root Devil. If you search that into Google, you're probably going to find his page. It also has a bunch of free stuff that he's made that you can download, and his itch page as well if you want to do stuff. A lot of the things on his page are free or very low price, so feel free to go check that out. See if you're interested. I think we've talked about them a little while ago, but there's stuff like familiar supplements and all that kind of thing. So if you're interested, go look up Franco. He's doing a lot of cool stuff. For myself, well, been a lot of different things. I've been running a campaign for a little while now that's coming to a close. I think I'm going to do a campaign wrap up in the middle of there. You guys have all sort of been around for this. We have talked about it several times in the last year because all the way from like starting the campaign and how that was working all the way to the middle where we were having sort of a realignment in the group that I was playing with. And that was really interesting to talk about. And now we're bringing it to a close. Hopefully it's going to be ending in May, so we can talk about that as a group as well. So look forward to that. But otherwise, I just really want to play other games other than D&D, and I want to play more short form games. I think that there's a lot of fun in long campaigns, and man, there's a dopamine hit waiting when you think about, man, what is that last session going to feel like at the end of a year-long campaign or whatever, when everybody is looking around and saying, wow, we just saved the world. Not only that, but the dragon that was eating the multiverse, well, we got him. And now we are gods in the multiverse. Like, that's just like a fun time. Like, everyone is at a high level then, and everyone has seen sort of the full story that you've put out there. I think this year for me in TTRPGs is going to be much more about how effective can I be with the lowest amount of sessions played possible. So I'm really excited to talk about that with you guys as well. As it goes to the podcast and what it's going to be for the next year, I really want to get back into the swing of producing stuff and putting it on Patreon, patreon.com/tabletopped. If you're interested, we already have a bunch of supplements, but I just need to get my creative juices flowing again and start putting more stuff up there for you guys. Very excited about that. We're also going to, like I said before, continue on at a 2 episode a month pace. It's just more sustainable for me right now. I'm so sorry. I know you loved your weekly boys, but we're going to go down to 2 a month, as we have been doing for the last probably 3 or 4, maybe 6 months at this point. Yeah, it's actually been a whole time. You guys are used to this by now. So nothing's really going to be changing. We're going to stick with the way things are. The other thing I've been thinking about is, the hosts, we're all very different people than when we started. I was looking back through some of our old episodes, some of the real favorites, like the original episode where we talked about horror games called The Horror. You can see it in the backlog. That has been just consistently had a really high interest. We've never done our Pantheons Part 2 episode, so I would really love to do that. There's a lot of things that I want to revisit and see how we feel about them now that we're very different. So that's going to be super exciting too. So start kind of looking for, or if you have specific topics that we've talked about, but want to hear our new thoughts or want to kind of put a different angle out there for us to discuss, please do send us some contact messages. You can always go to our website. It's free, tabletopppod.com. There's a contact form there. There's also access to our Discord. And, all of the guys and I, we are actually on the Discord. We read everything that comes in. Thank you for our community members who have been so cool, so great. We love seeing all the stuff you're doing. Here's a shout out to Jason. If you guys are interested in new games, Six Gun Doomsday is released and by our friend Shadowmane or Jason. And I'm super excited about it. You should go give it a check and see if you're interested as well. Play it a little bit. I'm sure you would be thrilled. I would be thrilled. And maybe we'll do an episode about it sometime. But also, if you are wanting us to talk about any specific things, like I said, that contact form or the Discord is a great way to get a hold of your lovely hosts. Everything else, guys, I mean, the big thing is that I'm considering, and this is just sort of a freewheeling monologue at this point. So one of the things that I've been considering a lot is like, where do we go from here? We're not trying to make this into like a profit thing. This really is just for folks who love this hobby and want to continue in it, all the things around it as well. And like, just want to talk shop, that's the whole point of this. But at this point, we have talked about a whole hell of a lot. And so that's why we're going to kind of go back and retread some old ground, because, as I said, we're all very different and have done this for so long that I think we're probably better GMs than we used to be and have different thoughts on things. So that's going to be great. But we really want to hear what you guys want to talk about, because we've been really draining our brains figuring out new and cool ways to talk about the hobby. But if you're, have an idea, we're always open to take that idea and produce it. So if you have a thing you want to talk about, please, or guests, that's another thing. One thing that has kind of happened in the hobby right now, ever since the dissolution of Twitter, I think, is that there really hasn't been a real strong creator community of like small independent podcasts reaching out to each other to have them on the pod. It's a huge bummer, really. But that's the way things are with our evil tech overlords making all of these spaces toxic. So if you have a guest that you're really interested in hearing from, just throw their name my way and I'll do some of the legwork trying to figure out whether they want to come on the podcast. Another thing that we're really interested in, we are not an actual play podcast. From the beginning, I sort of made that promise to everybody that we are not going to be just like another Adventure Zone or whatever. But we have been really interested in playing a couple of things so that you guys can actually hear and feel what these systems feel like. I think a lot of people get really nervous when they jump into new systems, because not everyone learns very well via just direct reading. They want to see it played or hear it played and kind of get a sense of it so that they can jump in with a little bit of context. I'm one of those people. And so I think that we're going to do a couple of actual plays here, more so that you get a feel for the system than actually do any sort of long term like story. You know what I mean? But we have a couple of things coming up that we're thinking about that I'm really excited for. One of them is Mythic Bastion Lands. Franco's been really excited about getting that on the table. Rio has really wanted to do a couple of one-shot ideas for a little bit. And I would love to run a 10 Candles, because I think now after, 4 years of doing this, 10 Candles is probably my favorite way to bring somebody into the hobby. I know that people feel like it's really freewheeling, like there really isn't a lot of rules to keep you penned in. You can kind of do whatever you want, and there's no like character sheet that's going to make sure that you are fenced in by sort of the laws of of the game. It's more like, hey, we're gonna just talk through this and play. And I think that that's a really fun way to get people invested and involved in the hobby, because it's a really low initial investment. It's there's a lot less friction there to get people caught up on rules minutia, or having to build a character based out of like 3 different books or whatever. It's just, let's set down 10 Candles and start playing. A little insight into my life just now recording this, because of the before mentioned technical difficulties that we've had that led to me doing this really fun, interesting monologue. I hope people like this. I'm not sure. But somebody just walked into the room. I'm at work, and I scared the shit out of them. So if people are excited by that, I just want to let you know it happened, and I feel bad about it. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Shade actually came up with a couple of really great questions that we talked about in our previously recorded episode that will never see air, most likely. I mean, I could. Would people want that? Would people want me to go back in, listen to my horrible audio, and re-record everything I said so that I can release it? I don't know. That's a lot of work. If people want that, then just let me know. I'll do it. So a little bit of a tale from the podcast. A long time ago, we had on somebody that is just super cool. Emily Zarka from Monstrum. If you haven't seen that series on YouTube, it fucking rules. She also rules. And we had such an interesting, cool podcast about the creation of monster myths and where they come from in the context of sort of like building your own monsters. And my audio didn't record then either. And so I had to go back, listen to Emily's answers, and then re-record questions that I thought that I asked. Wild, the old ways that we had to put up with here at Tabletopped, mostly because of moi. But back to what I was saying, Shade came up with a lot of really cool questions. I'm going to try to read a couple of them. One of them was, would you rather have the GM make all the rolls in a game, or your players make all the rolls in a game? With the idea of, if one person or one group in the dynamic of a GM versus players was only one of those groups was able to use dice as a mechanic to resolve things, who would you rather do this? And I thought that was a really interesting question, because we've had some stuff on the podcast before. Like, for example, Monster of the Week in its book says, none of your players should ever say, I would like to roll X. They should just be talking about what their character is doing, what they want to do. And at any moment, the GM steps in and says, that sounds great. I would love for you to roll X so that we can resolve that. And maybe I can give you some information, whatever it is. D&D also kind of has this with the idea of like the passive perception rolls and everything. Like, you should technically never be like, hey, I walk into this room. What's in the room? I'm going to roll perception check. You should just say what's in the room. And if the GM feels as though you need to roll, then you should be asked to roll. Does this in actuality work at anybody's table? I don't know. I feel like if you are not a super rock solid GM when it comes to rules, that you kind of want your players to indicate when they want to roll, right? And then if you are a GM that is super strong on the rules, you're very much like, hey, like, let's just really invest ourselves into the story, right? And there's like a million different ways in between that. But I thought Shade's question was interesting because it brings up the dynamic of who the mechanics are for. I thought the Franco was going to say that the GM should be the only one to roll dice, right? Because he hates skill checks. He hates all of those things. And so and he uses a bunch of randomized tables. And so his way of using dice is to randomize it and reduce the amount of weight that the GM is able to put on the scale of what is happening, if that makes sense. And so I assumed that he would do that, but he was much more about players obviously should have the role. That is the mechanic that they have. And I thought that was a great question, but what do you think? Post on the podcast in the comments, or come to our Discord and start up a discussion. I think that's a really interesting topic. Another one that we were talking about, let's see what we have here. You know who I feel like right now is Brittany Broski on the Broski Report. Not sure if anyone else watches that once in a while, but she just talks into a microphone for hours on end. And now that I'm starting to do it, holy shit, it's hard, guys. It's really hard. Oh yeah. Franco actually put out in our sort of like makers of Discord channel that we use to talk to each other, something called the 1 HP Dragon. So it's at www.explorersdesign.com/the 1 HP Dragon. If you're interested in sort of like designing big monsters and designing combat, but you don't want it to be the slow sort of like I swing my sword, you swing your sword. This is an article all about how you can make combat a puzzle and like trying to make it so that it feels less like you're crunching numbers or you're hitting like specific things that have to be done tactically. And instead, it's much more about dynamic story beats, tactical storytelling, all of that kind of stuff without a grid and all of that kind of thing. It's a great article talking about, monster stat blocks, puzzle box combat, and what they call solving the monster, which is all about writing down the lore and putting it into a puzzle that the players then have to solve to defeat the monster. And by puzzle, I don't mean like giving them a Sudoku and being like, that's the dragon, though that could actually be pretty fun. But it's much more about like creating encounters in which there is much more interactability with it. And I think that is very cool. So go check that out. And then some other questions. I'm so sorry. I'm slow on this, everybody. Yes. Here they are. Shade had a couple of things. Questions for me, he said. Who should manage mascot characters in your campaign? Let me explain. You walk into a tavern. Gobbo, the tavern keeper goblin, strikes your players in a certain way where they're just like, this guy's hilarious. He's cute. He's a fun guy, fun little guy. We need more of those fun little guys in our life. We're going to make that sort of a character that's with the group. Maybe they pay him to be the cook for them. And then he's now an NPC that follows the characters around, or it's one that they visit all the time. And Shade's kind of question was, who gets to narrate and storytell for that character? Who gets to make the decisions? It's a really interesting question. My gut instinct would be GM. The GM does that mostly because the GM gets to use those as, the GM's role in the world is to tell everything other than what the characters are saying, feeling, doing. That's your player's domain. So obviously that means that any NPC created really does fall to you, the GM. But then I was thinking about this a little bit more, and I was thinking about one of the things that really got me inspired to run one of my favorite campaigns. We've talked about a bunch on the podcast, Lakewood, which I made in Monster of the Week. And I got really inspired by that from the Taz series Amnesty. Kind of a similar vibe to what I was going for, really inspirational for me starting that campaign. And in that campaign, Justin McElroy his character, Duck Newton, has this sword that is a talking sentient sword. But Griffin let Justin also play that character, play the sword. And Justin chose to play it as a super antagonistic, awful, awful, like, mean spirited thing that was always, making fun of Duck Newton and all that kind of stuff. And it really got me thinking, if you trust your players not to try to do something weird with it, and this is kind of the thing that we always talk about, which is just like agreement for both the players and the GM on how we want this game to go. If the agreement is, I just want this character to be a laugh machine, and I want it to be someone who I talk to. Patrons can also be like this, like gods and that your paladin talk to or whatever. If they want a really specific relationship, you can just give it to them if you trust them. And it got me thinking about this greater idea of trust. What is the GM trusting the players to do? Because ultimately this is a game and we want to all have the most amount of fun possible. But I feel like in our kind of new era, there is this feeling that these things have to be both meaningful and fun. They have to tell a really excellent story. They have to be a incredibly designed sort of game. And they also have to be really fun when you play it. And that's a lot of pressure to put on a GM and players who might just want to, spend the hour or two hanging out with their friends. So I think that we as people who are really invested in this hobby, and I'm not trying to include any of our listeners because you're all probably very sane and normal, unlike me, but we have to take the pressure off and we have to say, you know what, this is just a great fun time with our friends. We don't need to make this the Odyssey. We don't need to make this any actual play. We just need to make it as fun as possible. And so I think that my initial answer to this question was the GM. Obviously, GM gets to do it. And I still kind of feel that way because then in this new sort of frame, I'm thinking, let the GM have an outlet to just have so much fun with the players. They don't get to be part of the party unless they're the goblin cook who just loves risotto and, the bard can't eat rice. And then that causes a lot of friction in the party or whatever. Like, that's just fun. And I think that people should be allowed to have fun. And then, of course, the GM can always kill them off for a story beat. But I also think now, after going through all of that, that we should, as GMs, really start loosening the grip that we have on the game. Because think about it in another way. You are leading a book club, or you are the person who knows how to play a board game and you're trying to get people to play with you. What your job in those cases are facilitating fun, but you're also doing it so that you can have fun as well. So there's just a balance there. And I think that letting the players have that fun, as long as it's not detracting from your fun, is always a great option. So that's my answer. It's long-winded. Let's see what Shade also had to say. Let me see if I remember anything. Oh yeah, this was a good one. So Shade posed this to Rio, but I'll just ask it generally. Do you prefer a system that clearly distinguishes weapons and their abilities, or should weapons just be a bit of flavor for classes? Great question, Shade. You're really on top of this. I kind of think that weapons in general really are just sort of extensions of flavor, right? Because there really isn't something that makes one D6 weapon better than another D6 weapon in most systems. And Franco made a great point when we were talking about this in the Lost Pod, where if you start adding a bunch of tags and stuff onto weapons, it will continually slow down combat. Shade was kind of, I think, asking kind of in the context of D&D. So I'll use that as a framework because they did do this in the new 0.5 edition or whatever that they've released, the new rules update, where they've kind of added a few things. My personal opinion from a designer's point of view is why not just make that part of the player's skills? Maybe it's like a specific skill that's like anytime you are wielding a short sword or dagger, add this, you know what I mean? So that you can imply your character is really good, like has studied swordsmanship. And so that's why with swords, they can hinder foes as though they had a shield or whatever it is. Just because then it allows the player to feel like it comes from them and not be so much about, okay, I need to find the right sword so that I have this specific tag. And this is kind of the same way I feel about magic weapons. Magic weapons, I feel like, are really cool. They're very awesome. But they also become such a fixation point for people. And I think that the way that I would design a system, if I was to do it, is to add all of those things into a player's class or a player's like level up mechanics that they can choose from, mostly so that they can feel like it's an innate skill that their character has from the get-go, or, you know, as they level up, they've become really good at using daggers or whatever. And so they get like a feat or something. I don't know, but what do you all think? Do you think that it's more fun to have more differences between the weapons and also be responsible for tracking that for yourself? Or is it more fun to just be like, yeah, I have a rapier, but I'm going to make it so that I can kind of level up that rapier instead of getting a magical sword that does something. Maybe it's like, you know, in manga, there's a really big sort of trope where you get to be to a certain level of skill, and then you sort of become magically good at something, like your sword begins to be able to cut down trees or whatever. And I think that is the way that I would go about it, because as you all know, everything is anime. Okay, let's do one more question and then we'll close out. This is going to be a little bit of a short one. Like I said, monologues are hard, but also I don't want to bore you guys if you hate this. So let's see. Ooh, here's another one. If you were involved in an actual play, what would you like that to look like? What genre, what system would you GM or play? Here's the thing. I think I have only once played Monster of the Week. I've only ever GM'd it. I love GMing Monster of the Week. I would like to try playing in a more sort of like multi-session sort of game. So maybe I would do that. But I've also played a lot of Monster of the Week, and that doesn't feel like it expands. Ooh, I think I would like to GM another Monster of the Week game. Mostly because Michael Sands, shout out, friend of the pod, is just a brilliant designer and is very specific with the feel of the game. And so I feel like it just works. And it doesn't take a lot of effort to design stuff that works, because all of the mechanics are conversation based, more or less. And so someone who, like myself, who's very comfortable improving and coming up with things on the fly, it feels like there is no barrier to creating a really fun session. And it also, guys, I've realized this about myself. I think I just love mysteries. I love designing them, and I love having people play them, because you bake in the joy of discovery into the game's success or fail mechanics. Like if you don't find any clues or whatever, it's failure, but like, that's fine, because it's very clearly like, hey, we still know nothing about this. And that leaves a lot of room to design a future session from. And if they do find out a lot of stuff, oh boy, that dopamine is just flowing, because you're like, holy shit, I know so much about this world that I didn't before. Very fun. So my answer to this is that it would be in Monster of the Week. It'd be an investigatory sort of game, which it supports just so well, maybe one of the best in the biz. I would limit specific playbooks because I really don't love a couple of the tropes that he put in there, but only because I feel like the games that I like to play are a little bit more grounded in sort of like there's a feeling of gravity, you know, around the characters. They're not, you know, a divine angel sent down to smite all the foes, or like this unkillable monster machine. Because I find those more one note, I think that's what it is. It's just that it makes playing the character feel more one-sided rather than multifaceted. Like if you play the mundane, which is one of the playbooks, you are constantly making decisions and showing different sides of yourself, because you have to be really adaptable to get through these horrifying situations. And I just think that that's really fun. So I think I would kind of exclude a couple of the playbooks, which is my right as GM Fiat. And I think I would like to GM. I'd like to GM for a table of 3 people or 2 people. Because I've TM'd so many big games. I'm just not good at them, guys. We really need to do another episode around big tables. And I think that the answer will be from Shade is that this is the way I do it, which he's very good at DMing for large tables. I think Rio would be like, I don't like doing it, but these are the answers I have. Franco will be like, the answer to this is to not do it. And I think that for me, like I've done it a few times. I think that it can work and it can be good, but I just always feel like there's one person at the table that's left wanting. What do you all think about that? Is that something that you feel at tables as well? Or as a player, if you're at a big table and you're like watching around, it's been like a half hour since you've done anything. Are you still invested? I have ADHD. My mind starts wandering. I start looking at manga. I start scrolling the internet. I actually have been having a huge renaissance of pen and paper playing because, man, it makes me invest so much more in the game. And it's been a blast. All of the people I play with are so talented and cool, including enemy of the pod, Tim. Tim, I'm going to solve that goddamn mystery. I'm going to find that dog in that weird hell dimension that you have for us. And I'm going to kill it. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to kill it. I don't know what the dog is. And it seems really scary. Yeah, so that's what I would do. Anyway, we're coming to the end here. So my thoughts on 4 years. This has been an incredible exercise for myself, both in humility and growth of a hobby. And I'm really happy that so many of you are interested and like to join in these conversations, leaving comments, sending us messages, coming on the pod in some cases, starting to design your own stuff. Oh my God, that's so cool. We had somebody on who designed the Red Mask Inn as a module supplement. That's just so cool. And it came from like someone in the community, and we had them on and we talked about it. That stuff rules. So I just want to thank all of you for showing me that this weird little hobby, it's actually something that connects us all. It's something that we all really love. And God, just thank you for allowing us to have these conversations for 4 years. It's been something that has really been a consistent part of my life for so long now, and it makes me feel really good. So thank you so much. I want to thank my fellow hosts. All of you guys fucking rule. I know that this is such a fucking hassle to have to come together and talk for hours on end about the same things, but you all make this worth it. Thank you, Franco. Thank you, Shade. Thank you, Rio. You guys are the best. I wouldn't do this with anybody else. Thank you to all of the people who have come on over the years. I've made some really great friends. You may know Grant from Game Master Monday. Grant is such a great person. Go check out their pod. Maybe you know Matt from Roleplay Chat. Man, fucking rules. That guy rocks. And I think you should all go listen to his podcast as well. We've also recently been getting back into the orbit of the Dice Legends folks. And man, Yuri, you're also awesome. It's been so good talking with you recently. And I've also made some friends that I've got to meet in person as well. Scripteds, you guys all fucking rule. And for everybody who is unaware, they are actually doing a call right now for submissions to be part of their new anthology book. They're doing a ttrpg anthology. It's like both supplements and systems. And it's all based around games that are from the perspective of cryptids. So if you have something that you're super interested in and it fits that bill, go to Scripted's website, submit this fucking thing so that you can be part of their kind of ecosystem in this anthology. Everyone over there is so fun and nice. You can't find nicer people. So go support them as well. And finally, I would like to thank myself. No, I'm just kidding. I'd like to just throw open the doors as always. I really view this as a way to get to know new people and new systems and new ways to interact with this hobby. So if you ever want to be a part of that, just reach out. Like I said, we have a Patreon, we have a website. Said those earlier on, but I guess I should say that again now. Tabletoppod.com. We have a contact form there, and our Discord. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/tabletop. Man, 4 years long. Let's see if we can get to 5. All right, y'all. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.